Hi everyone, this is Anagh, investor at Accel focused on early stage AI investing, especially interested in where AI meets deep and complex verticals. Thank you for sending questions for today's AMA, how I evaluate vertical AI startups. Over the last year or so, I have met hundreds of vertical AI companies going after interesting opportunities in legal, healthcare, manufacturing, and so on. I often wonder, is there a framework? Are there any commonalities that one can refer to when evaluating or thinking about building a vertical AI company? So today we are going to go through your questions one by one, and we'll try to understand how I look at these companies, what gives me a pause sometimes, what do I actually look for when I'm looking for that one special opportunity. And hopefully you enjoy the ride as with me. It's going to be 20 to 25 questions that we'll cover across 4 to 5 sections. So let's begin with the first section, which is picking the right problem, market, and timing. Oh boy, how do I split 100 points? It's a very interesting question. I would maybe start with the timing part. I feel the timing is just right across the board. This is the moment where foundation models have become really good at getting you a great head start, a good push whenever you're starting in any vertical. So pretty much every vertical that I can personally think of, the timing is just right. So don't worry too much about the timing right now if you're starting around the time of this video. So maybe 0 for that. The team is the most important. Of course, I believe every early stage investor would say that. And I'm a strong proponent as well. At least 50%, maybe so 50 to the team. Picking the right problem. So it's interesting the way you have framed this question. Even when you have picked the vertical, what is the right problem to go after that vertical? That sometimes can make or break the company, especially in the early stages. So that is maybe a solid 30 more. The solution, when you're thinking about long-term defensibility, it's not just about getting it done. It's also about how you're architecting the system so that you get some advantage over time versus other competitors who will definitely show up. There's no vertical where you'll not have competition. So another 15 for that, and 5 more maybe for the risk from foundation models. Though I would not worry too much about it. I don't see why or if it makes sense for the largest model builders to start going into deep operational workflows. That is almost always relevant for verticals. Great question again. Two level split. One is about the vertical itself. I would say most knowledge worker verticals would have some form of AI friendly kind of workflows where AI can create a lot of impact, and then the problem within that, right? So, in both these layers, look for what are the unstructured data, which are typically coming from various sources that have to be stitched together, analyzed, synthesized, summarized to get something done. So, the more unstructured data one has to go through as a professional, the more likely an AI assistant can come and help them get that do their job better. Especially when we are looking at high value workflows, where it needs a lot of pre-processing or day-to-day grind about going through data, fetching everything from the history, looking at all the past actions and so on, and then getting to an answer. So the last part has 80% of the value, but only 10% of the time can go into that. And 90% of the time actually goes into doing all this pre-processing work. Like for example, a lawyer. The most important piece is winning the case in the court. But before that, you have to do so much work, right? That is where AI comes in. So wherever that a lot of pre-processing around data is happening, that is AI friendly. That is one lens. The other lens is, okay, you have built a great AI assistant. What is going to be the adoption for that? What is going to be the friction in adopting it? Does it change current workflow or does it aid my current workflow? That's the second thing to think about. As with most questions, I would say the answer is it depends on what you truly feel your role in the world is going to be 10 years down the line. If you have an innate understanding of a vertical, I would say this is a great time to build a vertical AI company. But if you feel outside in, it's more about general purpose tooling that you can build on. It's, of course, that's the natural choice. Even in the second case, more often than not, a successful company will actually start with the particular vertical and then expand over time. So I would say even horizontal AI companies, while you can be horizontal in your vision, it's always a great idea to pick one vertical, one kind of a workflow to begin with, which is the classical VC and venture building advice. My suggestion to every technical entrepreneur who is starting in a vertical is to at least get a deep domain expertise expert, at least in the founding team, if not a co-founder. That is going to be a big leg up. But at the same time, there are always exceptions, right? So there are no generalities. But if I were in your seat, I would definitely go for expertise early on. For example, our investment in Bridgetown, the reason we were so excited about Harsh, of course, with all the other skills that he comes with, one of the main reasons we were excited by him is because he came with a very unique blend of experience, which is being a research scientist in Amazon AI, and then a consultant at McKinsey, and then building something for consulting. Now it's very hard to find both in one person. So typically we also look for complementary skills. When, let's say, if you're building for healthcare, is there someone who has sold healthcare software earlier, or been in healthcare ops, or even in the medical profession, partnering with someone with deep AI experience? So that wraps up our first section. Now we are going to the second one, which is about early MVP execution and GTM. So let's try about that. Unfortunately, I don't think there is an option to do one and not the others. I feel picking the first problem is the most important. We'll come back to it in other questions. But once you have figured what is the first problem that you're going to solve, it has to be a UI which natively embeds in the professional that you're targeting their workflow. Then you have to have the right data loops, as your question called out, or feedback collection mechanisms, so that as the usage on this particular feature increases, you are collecting valuable data which can help you increase your chances of differentiation and eventually defensibility. So that architecture has to be right. And of course, there has to be a model which really works, right? Because the expectation these days is really high. It's hard to sell a product with 30, 50, 60% accuracy and hope that the customer is going to be patient with me for the next few months or quarters to get that accuracy up. So minimum 75, 80, 90 kind of percent accuracy is an expectation for most verticals, even though I know it's hard to achieve. It generally happens when you have not truly understood who the buyer is and what their motivations are. Generally, when we are building in a silo, when we have, let's say, done 40 customer conversations, went back to the drawing board and started building, rather than constantly talking to the customer about every feature release, about everything that you have to work on to make the customer successful. And if you're keeping the customer close in the loop, especially early on with your design partners, you will on the way also figure what are some of the hacks for selling faster. Of course, there are some companies, some industries in particular, where it will be slow, like 6 months, for example, in selling to large healthcare companies, it's not long, like if you put that into context, right? So of course that expectation setting has to be there, but it cannot become 12 months for you, even in a long sales cycle industry, right? And especially early on, very slow sales cycle can kill the business because you need the momentum. You need the momentum not just to have revenue, but also to raise more venture funding, to hire better people, grow the team, and so on. Early momentum is very important. Unless you are able to raise 20 million in the first go, then of course you get 2-3 years leverage to build it in patience. But early momentum is very important. So try to find hacks around getting some early traction, so that then you can raise the next round and build from there. Now, traction doesn't necessarily mean revenue, especially for an early stage investor. When I say traction, what I'm actually looking for, what is the usage of the product? And is it useful? Is it creating ROI already for the customer? If I ring up the customer, do they start smiling naturally when I bring your product, right? So that is traction, what some people also call customer love, which may or may not necessarily mean revenue in the early stages. In fact, in many cases, going for too much monetization too early can kill the long-term prospects of the company. Great question. So design partners are actually almost co-creators of the business. They are almost as important as your first hires or your first investors. So one has to pick them carefully. Now, there are 100 things that are talked about how to pick a design partner and so on. I won't get into that. But I want to pinpoint, since you asked the question, what do people often get wrong in my experience, is they get too worried about churn of the design partners, which is counterintuitive. But I personally feel it's totally okay. Let's say you are working with 5 design partners, 6 months down the line, you lose 4 of them. That is totally okay, because that means that you have taken an active call on what is the right product that you want to build. And then you found that one person which is fitting into your ICP, and the other 4 maybe are not, or they have different expectations, or they are putting into a very consulting, servicey kind of a path. So while it's very important to pick the right design partners, it's equally important to know when to walk out as well. In software is simple. There are only 2 types of wedges. Either you increase revenue for the customer or you decrease costs. It's always, of course, both have ways to build the business. But if you are increasing revenue for the customer, it's always a better place to be in, because there are different kind of business models which open up, which could be revenue share or usage based or outcome based. So if you're directly attacking revenue, let's say you're building a vertical specialized receptionist with AI for hotels and restaurants, right? If you're directly handling customer queries, leading to more conversion, not missing out on people who call late at night or during busy hours, that means you're directly impacting revenue. That's a great wedge to be in. When you're cutting costs, then always, if you're cutting direct costs rather than like soft costs, or like not do very easily attributable costs, then that makes more sense. Especially, let's say you're going after a workflow which is outsourced anyway, right, to an offshore team. Then it becomes a direct, okay, I'm paying $50 to the offshoring company. Now I'm paying $10 to this AI company. So that is $40 saving for me right away. Great question again. And especially for Indian startups, it's very relevant. You have to be very careful about what is the product that you want to sell and what is the product that the customer wants to buy. And especially what I'm seeing is happening in AI is, of course, every enterprise in the world wants to move forward. Everywhere it's a board level conversation to move forward with AI. They get a great AI startup team that has started working with them on something. They start using it as an opportunity almost to help their team get trained, and whatever other retrieval or other basic workflows they had, they want to get it solved. And this is the trap you have to avoid if you're building an AI product company from the beginning. You have to focus on what is your offering. Of course, it will come with the risk of losing the customer, but that might mean that it might not be the best customer in the first place. You have to look for what is the problem and the customer, is there a fit? And if it's a direct fit, only then onboard that customer. Product-led growth is one of the most misunderstood terms, I would say, of our times. A lot of people confuse great marketing with PLG. They're not the same thing. PLG would always mean that it's a self-serve product. If you give the product in the hands of a customer, they can simply log in and start using it without any onboarding delay. Very few actually workflows are suitable for this. So we have to think through, if you're building a company, like, is this user that I'm targeting, does this user have autonomy even? Are they even allowed to try new products? First of all, that's the first cut. If yes, then do they have autonomy to start using something new? And third is this kind of a customer even searching for tools online? Do they have this behavior of trying out different tools? Then it makes sense to go PLG. Otherwise, classic sales, which is more top down, which is like outbound, inbound, all those motions we can talk about in another question, that makes more sense. Absolutely. I think there's no Indian AI company or American AI company or French AI company. Today, like in the world of hyper communication, it's all about being an AI company, which is global in nature. Always makes sense to start, again, goes back to my previous answers, start with the right ICP, which might be in India, might be in the US. More often than not, it will be in the US, just because of the size of the market. But if you find a great partner to work with from India, why not? Just get started. But just be mindful of the trap. If you, let's say, start going too deep into a geography which is not large enough, by that time, some other competitor might come in the other market, which is larger. So it's important to, like, in this case, actually, like, US is the largest software market in the world by a stretch. So I would always, at least I'm always advising all our portfolio companies to start targeting the US as soon as they can. Great. So moving on to the next section, interesting topic. We are going to talk about how to evaluate traps and how to think about competitive landscape in your vertical. While there could be a lot of gyan about, okay, this is one particular very boring old school vertical that a model is never going to come, therefore attack that. I respect that. But at the same time, there are cursors of the world, a bridge of the world, where all the foundation model companies, all the incumbents like who have their own model building capabilities, they were going after the same opportunity. But look at Cursor, which is actually going to coding head on, which is competing with GitHub Copilot, which was the first mover in the market, which had all the resources from Microsoft and of course with the OpenAI partnership. So if you actually end up building a great product and your particular target user is loving it, then the risk from the foundation model actually doesn't really matter that much. If you are able to be the tool for that particular user. And now we have come to a point that, like, if you look at this YC batch, you'll find a large percentage of companies calling themselves Cursor for X, right? So Cursor and other companies have proven that there is no particular niche that you can't build an application company in. Absolutely. That's why it's important to think about the architecture of the solution when we are trying to build a co-pilot, assistant, agent, whatever you call it. It's pretty much the same thing for any particular professional. And if it's actually a little bit of prompt engineering, some scaffolding with some UI, you might start getting initial revenue, but it will be hard for you to differentiate over time. And that is why having own mechanisms for evals in-house, having mechanisms for collecting more feedback data, and making sure that the platform is getting better with every usage, that is how we create long-term defensibility. Generally, I do that when I find the business side thinking missing in the team. We are seeing a lot of PhDs, a lot of very credible technical people starting up in vertical AI as well. But to my previous answer, it's sometimes important to have some kind of an expertise in the team. It might not even be full time. Let's say you have two people already decided, both of you highly technical, already decided this is vertical of choice. Then maybe having advisors or having people in the founding team, if not a third co-founder, to have that kind of business side thinking. That is important. You can build the best tech in isolation, but you'll realize that someone with like an 80% good, better, like 80% kind of tech with slightly better business side team will end up winning a year down the line. And you will realize that I have spent a year building a tech which no one wants to use. That is not something we want. In fact, in Accel, we are very keen to back highly talented technical people, and only advice is to like either develop business side thing themselves or partner with someone. Now we'll go to the next section, which is maybe a favorite topic for Twitter conversations. What are the moats? So moats, defensibility, and scaling. I'll first try to talk about how I think about moat itself. I think in a lot of conversations, people talk about moat too early for companies. Moat is defending a castle, but when you are like a two people team with a paper stage idea, or let's say 4 customers working on that, you don't have a castle. You have to first build the castle, right? And moats therefore get developed only over time. When you have a castle and then you have started putting cannons and walls and everything around it. So do not worry about moats too early on. Figure out what is the best problem to solve, how to go about it, and then what is the right architecture to go at it. Over time, especially in verticals, you'll realize that the brand that you have built early on and the first set of customers that customer love in overwhelming majority, that itself becomes your moat. But if you try finding for this moat very early on, you'll not get an answer. Let's look at some companies and how they have gone about it. For example, Harvey, which was one of the early movers in the legal vertical. Now, Harvey actually started with an email to the OpenAI team from the founder when they had used one of the earlier GPT versions of the models to get very good results for lawyers, which got OpenAI's interest and they actually became an investor in them. And Harvey, I don't know about the current technology, at least in the early days, it was just a workflow on top of OpenAI models. Because of the market timing, they were able to get a lot of market share. And I'm sure since when they hired over time and started building the team, if they had architected the solution in the right way, then of course they will be collecting proprietary data over time and then scaling from there. So sometimes speed is so important that you might not even have to, or might not like be a good idea to like get the perfect solution out, build something completely proprietary, full stack, as you had asked, and then go for it. Sometimes timing and velocity matters more. Switching cost completely depends on how deeply embedded you are in the workflow, right? And switching costs are typically high when the client has to lose something or do a lot of work if they have to take you out. And that is exactly SAP, Salesforce, the classic system of record playbook. So the more actions you're capturing, the more important information you're capturing over time on the same platform that you have built, the more sticky you will become. That is one way. The second is if you are the platform where the company, the customer is talking to stakeholders. Let's say you're going after the logistics use case, and then all the logistics customers are talking via your platform to their customers, their retail customers or their end customers, and so on. And all those conversations are captured here. And every new like employee that joins in either your customer's customer or in your customer, they have to be on the same platform to communicate. Think of it like maybe Slack for this vertical. Then it becomes super sticky. Defensibility is different. Defensibility is also about if someone had to build the same product and then going after the same customers, how do the customers think about these two companies, right? And that is anybody's guess. But of course, there is always, if you pick a vertical, there is always taste with which you build the product that comes with it and the advantage of having some customers early on. That's why I go back to the previous question that if you have early customer love and then you're able to scale from then, and on the way you're developing incremental technology, you will be in a much better place if you're, let's say, 2 years later and trying to take on the market head on. It's all over the place. That's the honest answer. I have evaluated Series A's with less than $1 million ARR and raising at 200 to 300 mil valuation. Also looked at companies at 4 million ARR, raising at 40 million valuation. At the end of the day, VC is a demand supply market. If there is a lot of demand for your particular company among investors, then there is no particular scale that you have to hit. Of course, with all the previous answers that we discussed, if those things are in place, there's no one milestone that you have to hit to get a great valuation and get a great investor for Series A. Do not raise if you're not sure about the problem within the vertical. Picking the problem is equally important as picking the vertical. The most counterintuitive insight for me has been that the kind of buyers for AI has changed a lot. People who are traditionally not great software buyers are actually great AI buyers. If you go to even a spa or a salon and you're selling an AI receptionist, they have a higher velocity of adoption than if you go to large enterprises in the hospitality industry looking to automate. Oh, I'm a huge fan of a bridge. Those guys have hit it out of the park in healthcare, figuring out a pointed solution, great AI model that works for that use case, which is medical transcription. And I'm like all the best to the team. I think they are on the way to create a very large AI company. Closer home, of course, I'm biased, but huge fan of the work the team at Bridgetown is doing, which is taking on consulting with a very fresh approach. Great. That wraps up today's AMA. Thank you so much for the questions again. I literally enjoyed and loved going through each and every one of them. And this set of questions forced me to introspect. Are we even taking the right strategy when it comes to evaluating vertical AI companies? Hopefully, there were some insights that you could relate to. I would, of course, love to hear from you if you have any feedback or if you have any other questions. This is one of my favorite topics, probably my favorite topic, if I have to be a nerd about it. So always available here on my email, which is on the screen. So at SeedToScale, our focus is to help the founders have as smooth a founding journey as possible, as frictionless, get the basic questions answered, get all the resources that they can from this platform. So this is a small attempt in that regard for vertical AI founders in particular. If you are starting up in vertical AI, I would love to hear from you. And hopefully we get to partner soon on your ambitious ideas.